from Michigan, where I actually am right now. So it's 1 o'clock for me. I was just about to say good afternoon. And I am currently in my Master's of Counseling at Denver Seminary down in Littleton. I'm happy to be here today. And today I'm going to be talking about just some interviewing tips and interviewing skills that you can use when it comes to job searching and landing an interview. A couple of notes to have. So I encourage questions throughout. Don't worry about cutting me off. I'll keep like a brief pause after each slide. Or you can ask questions in the chat. And if there's, Sheila, if you want to just observe that, if there's any questions, feel free to cut in. And then I do have a bad habit of talking fast. So please don't hesitate to ask me to talk a little slower if need be. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with everyone and we're going to get started. And I believe you all can see it. Give me a thumbs up if you can see it, Sheila. Awesome, great. Okay, so interviewing skills, there's so much right now, especially with COVID just being what it is and with us potentially having to do interviews virtually. Sometimes people are calling into interviews or they're going in, but like if you have an in-person interview, do you shake their hand? Do you do this? So there's just lots of change going on right now. So this presentation was kind of created pre-COVID, and so not much has changed, but there might be some little things that you might have to not be able to do, such as shake a hand or hand in a paper copy of your resume, things like that. So pre-COVID and now just being current, most of it's the same, but again, just those little changes that we see. So here you have our contact information with the Career Hub. That's our phone number and email should you ever need to get in contact with us. And then I will leave my email in the chat before I head out today. So go ahead and screenshot that, or some of you just might have this information already. Okay, now the most important thing when we're looking at an interview nowadays, because the job market is so crazy and I would say like recruiters and interviewers are looking for such a specific person or role when it comes to what they might be looking for with this job. And so first impressions are huge. And so that can mean anything from like professionalism to dress, behavior, attitude, various things like that. So professionalism is often determined by first impression. How well did you research the organizations before the interview? And so nowadays you can't just show up to an interview and not know anything about the company. They're going to ask you, oh, what attracted you to apply for this position? What's something that attracted you to our company, things like that. And so you're going to want to be able to do the research about this position that you're applying for, as well as the company culture. Are they doing well? How are they with diversity and inclusion? Are they automotive? Are they manufacturing? Just depending on your major, or if you're in education, how is the school district doing? There's so many different things that you might want to know about this company and a lot to research because they'll probably ask you about it in an interview. Going along with that, they're going to size you up quickly. They're going to know pretty quickly if you did your research or not. And then even in casual environments, professionalism is expected. So just depending on the company or the position, you never kind of know what they're going to be looking for. And so it's better to be over-prepared and more professional than to be under-professional. For example, like jeans and a nice shirt, you're going to want to, even if it is a casual position, you're going to want to dress a little bit more up for that. And then, like I said, dress, behavior, attitude, you're going to want to try to be the best you can be. And it's okay to be nervous, but heck, they might compare you to someone that did really well. And so that's why we have mock interviews here at the C2 Hub, various things to help prepare you for that. And we'll give you feedback on how you did in your mock interview. And again, practicing with the C2 Hub staff, we've done interviews and mock interviews for a variety of positions and majors. So it doesn't hurt to reach out to us for that. Okay. Now, this is just an interview prep checklist. Of course, it can look a little different depending on what you might be applying for, what company, what your major is. It's just going to be different regardless. So you want to dress to impress, like I said, overdress yourself, but not like in a formal tux or things like that. You want them to be able to remember you. And you can bring a folder, or sometimes we kind of hear this word like padfolio, for example, kind of looks like a leather binder, kind of like fake leather zipper thing that has kind of like a notepad and maybe a section for like your resume or cover letter. Sometimes manila folders work too, but if it's like, I'd say more of a professional position, you want to have something that looks pretty nice and kind of matches what you're wearing. And so that can include copies of your resume, copy of your cover letter, references if they do happen to ask for them. And then you want to prepare kind of a list of 3 to 5 questions that you'd want to ask the people that are interviewing you once you're done with your interview. Most common ones I hear from students is, tell me about a day in the life in the company here. I encourage students to even ask the interview, how did they get to the position where they are today? Especially if you want to move up in this company, you might have to do something like what they do someday. And then company culture is a really big one to ask about. Is it silly? Is it professional? Can you not fool around or have fun? Depending on the company. Google, for example, has a fantastic company culture, but they're required to work a lot longer hours than what they might initially sign on for. Various things like that to prepare for. The job announcement, you want to reread that as many times as you can. So you don't have to bring this with you into an interview, but you want to be able to just remember, like, yep, I have 2 years of experience in this, for example. If they're looking for bilingual, yep, I'm fluent in Spanish or another language, various things like that. So you want to be able to, when you're looking at this job interview, or I'm sorry, job announcement, see that, yeah, I align with this pretty well. And it's okay if you don't hit every bullet point, but they just want to see that you're pretty similar to this and this was something that you feel like you're qualified for. Next thing, directions to the interview place, of course, GPS, prepare beforehand. One thing I did when I was looking for internships is I'd drive there the day before just to make sure I knew where I was going. It depends how close that is to you as well. And of course, this is also for an in-person interview. So it never hurts to kind of drive there, walk in, especially if it's a building that has tons of different offices and companies, just to know like where their office is. And then of course the Zoom link, test that early. You don't want to be late for a Zoom link. And then Sheila's nodding or shaking her head. And then you want to eliminate the unknown. So if you can find out who is interviewing you, their titles, and then potentially the length and the format of the interview. And it's great to know who could be interviewing you because then you're able to kind of tailor your cover letter exactly to them. They're going to see that you've done the research to find out who's going to be, I guess, reviewing their resume and cover letter. And then length could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. Sometimes, depending upon the position, they're going to ask you to demonstrate your skills. You just never know. So that's a question that you're going to want to ask when they call to schedule your interview. And then the format of the interview, again, are you going to be doing a teaching lesson? Are you going to have to share your portfolio? It just depends on the position and the company you're looking at. Mints, breath spray, tissues, great things to have with you. These are things that I'll have in my car before interviews if it's in person. And then one thing I like to do is I always go to the bathroom before my interview starts. I check my teeth, I blow my nose, make sure I'm looking good and I'm comfortable with myself. And that's just a kind of a quick tip there. And then water you can leave in your car or kind of recycle once you get into the building. If you happen to bring kind of like satchel or bag with you, you can just kind of leave that in there as well. And then your phone on silent or off, or just leave it in your car. That's huge. And the most embarrassing thing is like when a phone goes off, or you can hear the vibrating too. So you just want to make sure it's on silent, do not disturb, and put away. Okay. Like I mentioned a little bit about dressing, you're going to want to know the standards for interviews and networking events, especially with online interactions. So most of us with these virtual events, or if we're attending something that's professional, we're going to have our nice dress on or nice shirt, and then we might be in pajama pants. You can get away with that for online things, but some people are like, no, I have to wear dress pants because that's just the norm for me at my job. So regardless, whatever they can see, you want it to be able to look professional. And then, of course, that reflects your interest and seriousness. I mean, heck, if you're doing a teaching position or applying for a corporate job, you're going to want to stand out, but also be as professional as you can. And then, like I mentioned, lean more towards conservative in dress, unless the industry is clearly seeking a different look. So by conservative, it just means be a little bit more careful with what you're wearing for that first impression. And then once you get the job, you can kind of get a vibe for what the company is wearing on a day-to-day basis. But you don't want to come in and like catch them off guard, I'd say. And then you should be doing the talking, not your clothes. And so what that can mean is like, you don't want to wear super bright colors or interesting patterns. And I say color lightly because, for example, a lighter or a little bit brighter shirt can help them remember you. Like, oh yeah, Shelby was the one that interviewed in like a peachy pumpkin colored sweater. You don't have to be like all black or all white or things like that. But you don't want it to be like too flashy, if that makes sense. These are just a few examples that we kind of have here. Regardless of what this looks like, business formal, Some of you might think like, oh, formal, that's like prom dress. No, business formal, usually kind of a three-piece type thing, dress pants. You don't have to wear heels, and a type of jacket or a blouse, things like that. Business can kind of look a little similar when it comes to like a top and a skirt. Business casual, you can kind of see more kind of dress pants, not need for a suit jacket. You just kind of have a sweater. Smart casual, I also call it snappy casual. You can have a nice top and jeans and some nice shoes. And then casual, depending on what that looks like, whatever position you should apply for. I mean, it can be a range of things, but casual, but still appropriate in terms of, I guess I would say, like length of things and things like that. And then we kind of have the similar dress here. Business formal, we have more of a suit jacket, whether business just doesn't really have that jacket, but still a tie. Business casual are khakis, nice fitting shirt, and then smart casual, snappy casual, and that type of casual can you can play it up with jeans and just still make it look nice, still make it look professional, but again, it is a more casual style of dress. Okay, so one thing that's super huge in interviews, especially even online things that I've noticed, and especially in mock interviews, is your nonverbal behaviors. So if any of you have noticed, I've been kind of wiggling in my swivel chair here because I am nervous, just kind of doing this. And so I've caught myself like, Shelby, stop swiveling. But that's an important thing, especially to keep in mind if you are interviewing in person and if they have swivel chairs in the office. Not sure why they would, but you never know. Or if you're kind of sitting at your desk doing an online interview, just kind of be mindful of what you might be doing. Appropriate eye contact is huge. A lot of times when I'm interviewing students right now online, they're kind of looking at my face on the screen. And so if you've noticed, I've tried to kind of look at my laptop light the whole time when I'm trying to keep eye contact with you guys. Speaking clearly is huge. It's okay to smile too, and it's okay to be nervous. And you can admit it if you like, but most of the time they'll be able to catch it. You just never know. And then be positive. You're excited to be at this job. They give you an interview and they want to talk to you and get to know about you. And they want you to be able to answer some questions of things that you, I guess, might come in contact in the workplace, or scenario-based questions or things like that. Be positive about yourself there. Practice good dining etiquette. And so what this could look like, sometimes we see in various positions where they might have kind of like a lunch interview, for example, or if you already got the job, they might want to take you out to lunch as kind of like a, hey, welcome to the company, first day type thing. Just good dining etiquette. You can kind of look this up online if you're not exactly sure like how proper you should be, but napkin on your lap, various things with like the fork and the knife, make sure there's like nothing dripping off your face, whatever. Just like, imagine like you're having dinner with your grandma. If your grandma, I guess, would say is like more traditional, I don't know, or like the president or just like the CEO of the company, just like you really want to present yourself in a good manner. And then again, socially appropriate behavior, regardless of what that looks like. And of course, it's dependent upon your position. Okay, attitude kind of going along with that. You want to show enthusiasm and be energetic, even if you're coming into an interview after a long day of work or class. They want to be able to see you at your very best and kind of get a vibe of kind of how you are during the day. And it's okay to be tired, but they do want to see you as energetic and as best as you can. And so this isn't meaning like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this interview, blah, blah, blah. Like you don't want to be hyper in a way. And some people kind of over prepare in that sense. Just be yourself. And if yourself is kind of like, just kind of cool and chill going with the flow, do up that energy just a little bit because they're going to want to see that, especially if energy and enthusiasm is a part of your daily job. Asking questions is huge, just like I mentioned, as well as exhibiting confidence in yourself. And then just kind of in the interview, expressing interest is huge. Again, talking about what you know about the company culture, do they give back to the community, various things like that. And then as well as knowledge, expertise, and skill. And so this is where your resume is going to kind of come into words. Once it starts with your interview, you're able to kind of apply like, oh, some education you've had, some courses you've completed, some projects you've done, some work experience that you've had, and various skills or technologies or software that you know. You should be able to talk about that in an interview and be pretty confident with that, especially if it's on your resume. They might ask you about it. And then just a quick point to say that confidence is not arrogance, but you also don't want to be super overconfident, kind of more of that like cocky ego vibe. You don't want to be like, oh, I know I'm getting this job, so let me just kind of play it cool and be too casual in a way. You want to, I guess, show like preparedness, be confident in yourself, smile, be excited, because you may or may not get the job, but the more you kind of do interviews and the more you prepare yourself, the better along you'll be. And then genuineness, of course, goes a long way. This might come with a handshake, but of course with COVID, we just don't know what that's going to look like. I've heard of people kind of tapping their right foot with someone else's right foot. We just don't know at this time. So just being genuine, being as kind as you can, a smile is huge, and then thanking them at the end. Okay, so interviewing jitters are totally normal. I used to be terrified to go into interviews. It just wasn't my thing. I'd rather interview over computer if I can, but in-person things will start up eventually. We just don't know when. And so it's totally okay to have anxiety over this. I mean, and then there's just stuff with your position and potential future company that you just don't know. So it's okay to kind of just like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. If I blah, blah, blah. Like, don't worry about that unknown. Chain worrying, I call it chain worrying, like kind of like going down one path, like, oh, if I mess up this, I'm not going to be able to get this job. Don't worry about that. It's okay to kind of be anxious, but also don't let it control you. And so there's breathing exercises you can do and just kind of like relaxing and breathing before you get to the interview room. And the best way to do that is just to know yourself. That's why you're there. They want to get to know you. They want to be able to talk to you and kind of get a feel for your kind of personality and what you can bring to the company. And then, of course, knowing the organization and the industry as well. They're going to ask you about that. And so the more you know, the more that they're going to remember you as well. And so just here at the bottom, we see find the match between their needs and your skills. So again, this is where we're kind of looking at the job description. All right, what are they needing and what can I provide with them? And that might be just doing some research for a various software or a various, I guess, like technology app that they might use for communicating with other people in the workplace, things like that. And so they might ask you to be like, oh, sorry, I don't know what that was. I'm so sorry. And that'll happen too. Various technical things going on in the background, especially if you're interviewing in your home. If they ask you to be fluent in a variety of softwares, but you don't, go ahead and do some research and express your willingness to kind of learn it as you go, even if you're not fluent in it by the time of the interview. Okay. And then be ready to talk about yourself. Like I said, they're going to ask you about various things that they might have seen on your resume. They might even tailor some questions to what they saw on your resume. So whether this looks like education and experience, talk about your major, talk about some courses you might have had, some projects like I'd mentioned, and then experience with any positions that you've had that may relate or may not relate to the position that you're applying for. They're gonna somehow, and there's some way where any past position might apply to what you're looking at now, even if it's retail and food service. They're gonna be looking for that communication, that teamwork, that organization, various skills that kind of overlap to every position. Next, we see skills, abilities, and interests. So kind of what I just mentioned about various softwares or technology apps that they might be asking you to use. And then some skills we'll see with like intelligence, creativity, leadership. They might ask you about a scenario where it's like, tell me about a time where you used leadership in a situation, what happened, what were the results? And so, although those are kind of sub questions within the question, you want to answer all of them and then tie it back to leadership. Even if you've never had like a leadership position, you might have been the leader in a group, or you might have had to take over for something in terms of like an emergency, for example. And then below we see lots of examples. They might ask you a lot of scenario questions with organization, communication. Like I said, if there was an emergency that ever happened on the job, how did that go? What did you do? Long and short-term goals. So they might ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And so you'd want to be like, of course, at this company, whether you may mean it or not, they're going to want to see commitment to this company if they hire you on, because they want to build you from within and develop you from within. Short-term goal could be anything from, gosh, a few months to a couple of years. That might mean getting a master's degree in something, getting certified in something, whereas long-term goals could be moving across the country, having a higher position in this company, various things like that. And then they usually always ask about strengths and weaknesses. I'm so sorry, I can't talk today. They usually always ask about strengths and weaknesses, and that's a question that we do ask in our mock interviews as well. work values, things you bring to the table, attitude, and expectations. And so, like I said, you want to refresh your resume. You want to look it over right before you go in and be like, oh, yep, I did put that on there. I'm going to probably have to be able to talk about it, things like that. Okay, like I've mentioned previously, you want to research this organization, especially the nature of the job. So it could be a new position that they've never hired for before. So some of you could be going into positions that aren't even created yet, which is pretty exciting in terms of how technology and how COVID has affected things, whether it's been positive or negative. So many different positions have been created because of these kind of hills that we've had to overcome. Researching employer size, locations, are they national, are they international, are they local? Some products or services they might provide, what their reputation is within the community. Like I said, locations, if they have any projected growth, whether they do well in sales, especially if they're corporate or if they're for-profit, things like that. So you're going to do your research as best as you can. Talk to employees and maybe even host kind of an informational interview. And so what this is we kind of talk to students about like, hey, find a connection on LinkedIn of someone that has kind of your dream job or is working for your dream company. It's okay to connect, and it's totally okay to reach out. Talk to, tell them about yourself, ask them if they would love to kind of have maybe 30 to 45 minutes of their time, whether it's through a Zoom call or potentially like the coffee shop in their company's lobby. And you're just able to talk to them. So this isn't a formal interview where you're interviewing for a job. You're just kind of interviewing that person and asking them what they love about their role, how they got to where they are now, their company culture, various things like that. And depending on how that goes, should they say yes to you, you can continue to connect more with them. They could potentially be a reference to you should you apply to that company one day. They could help you kind of network and kind of connect you with others as well. So it's a great thing to do. Excuse me, they love talking about themselves and they love kind of mentoring the next generation. So it never hurts to kind of reach out and find those people on LinkedIn. And then of course, why do I want to work for this organization? They might ask you that question. So they're going to see whether you've done your research or not. So just be prepared for that one. And then access employer information online in annual reports, libraries, business section of newspaper, annual readings, etc. So you can do a lot of research and find a lot of various things online. Here at the C2 Hub, if you go to our website, we have a list of resources that you can find. One specific is called Reference USA. So you can kind of look and type the company in and kind of see like, oh, their sales last year have been increasing, or they look like they're pretty financially stable right now. You can find a lot of information there as well. And then there's just a ton of more resources too. And then the more you know, the less anxiety you'll have. So you have to put the work in to kind of feel better internally. Okay, top 10 career readiness qualities employers seek. And so sometimes we see these as skills listed on resumes, and then these are just things that they might be looking for in general. So communication skills, verbal, written, are you able to read directions, various things depending upon your description or job, I would say. And then of course, how you communicate in the interview. Interpersonal skills, they're gonna ask you about teamwork. Do you relate well to others? Teamwork, like I just said. Honesty and integrity, that's huge. They're going to want to be able to trust you and keep you around, especially if you perform well. Are you analytical, problem solving, critical thinking? And then these could be stronger or less needed depending upon the position. Flexibility and adaptability, especially if you might be working different hours or might be doing different tasks each day or each week. Motivation is huge. They want to see leaders and see leaders out of all of you. And so your motivation to work hard and to become a leader in your position is really noted. Proficiency in your field of study. So of course, they might be looking for a bachelor's degree, 2+ years of experience, for example, or certification in something, you never know. And then we see computer knowledge as well as self-confidence. Okay, occupational knowledge. So basically this just means how well do you know about this job, about this industry, things like that. You're going to want to list examples that might come up that they ask you about to some skills, abilities, and interests that you have, but also what they might be asking for. And then understanding trends of the industry. So for example, technology is huge right now. That seems to constantly be growing. And again, you might be applying for a position in the future that's not created yet. And an example of that would be like social media manager of a company. Those didn't really exist 10 years ago before everyone had phones and was constantly had access to the internet in the palm of their hand. So what trends might be happening? Healthcare is huge right now. Nutrition, like any position would be hiring regardless, but you want to see like what could potentially the next 5 years look for this position. And then you can research typical duties and responsibilities for your position through onetonline.org, or it might be .com, I'm not sure. But ONET is fantastic for finding you positions. So you can just type in position and they might come up with a list of descriptions like knowledge, skills, and abilities that you might need to have for this position or this career. They're going to tell you if you need like a bachelor's or master's or additional certifications or trainings, what a salary might look like. And of course, the salary will differ across the state. Colorado has a higher cost of living than Michigan right now. So various things like that. And then career services has a lot of different resources for you. And then professional organizations will find some resources as well. Sorry, I'm going to check. Sheila, is there anything in the chat that I should note? Okay, sounds good. Okay. All right, so presenting yourself by phone or virtual platform with confidence. So like I said, some people are more comfortable being through the screen and some aren't. I definitely am. I would not be able to probably speak in front of all of you, just kind of like standing how I am. I start to shake when I'm presenting in person. But of course, I started shaking when I started presenting presentations for this job, and now I'm doing a lot better. So in terms of virtual, have your resume and cover letter in front of you along with a notepad, and then they'll probably ask you for an emailed resume and cover letter to them prior to the interview as well. You want to listen carefully to the questions and answer exactly what is asked. So this is regardless if it's in person or virtual. And it's okay to ask them to repeat the question, especially if you pause to think of an answer and then you kind of forgot what they asked. Don't be afraid to ask to repeat, but you just don't want to do that for every question. Smile when you speak to convey enthusiasm. This is something I've had to work on because I have like kind of like my resting face that I've had to work on a lot. So just be aware of that, or ask someone to be like, hey, do I kind of have a resting face? And if they say, yeah, you just like have to work on it and all of that. So just be aware of that. Be sure you can hear the interviewer and that you can be heard. So testing out your sound beforehand, just be like, hey, can you hear me? If they say yes, great. If no, just make sure that you kind of know how to kind of fix that, or just test it out way before you start. Sitting up straight and dressing professionally. I'm not doing that right now. I'm like bent over. So kind of just a reminder, and they kind of see posture as a good thing. Better posture leads to better confidence in a way. Speak succinctly. And what that means is just like, give yourself a little bit of a pause or a couple seconds to kind of organize your answers in your head. And also don't be long-winded, but avoid very short answers. And so there's kind of like, I'd say like an unspoken time frame to when you should kind of complete your answer. Do give yourself a pause before you start, because again, you might be talking over your words, or your brain might not be catching up with what you're saying, and then it might be an awkward pause as you're trying to think about what they said, and it can just get awkward. So make sure you kind of collect your thoughts as quickly but as timely appropriately as you can. And then again, don't run on, but don't kind of say like, yep, I was a leadership assistant once. Like, you want to be able to talk about that. They're going to ask you like, oh, what did you do? Just talk about it in the beginning. Don't keep it short. Be careful not to speak too fast, a huge issue that I have. So thank you for sticking with me so far. And then it's just a reminder to slow down. Even with virtual platforms right now, you can write a sticky note, heck, even on your computer, to be like, look at me, like look at the camera, or smile, sit up straight, slow down. Those are some things that I've done even for myself. And then don't eat or chew gum. They're going to hear it. It's gross. And then if you have water, drink quietly, or take a sip when they're asking you a question, or if there's a little bit of a break for you. Like I said, silence your cell phone, put it away, leave it out of the room. You can be away from it for the time of the interview. And then avoid nervous habits like clicking a pen. They can hear it. It's going to be annoying. Sometimes students will like twiddle their thumbs. I was even doing it right now. So just kind of keep it out of sight. And then should you ever have to go interview in person, keep like in mind of like your shaking leg that might happen, the swiveling in the chair, various things like that. Okay, so questions and answers, what are they looking for from you? And so first thing, communication style. How are you able to communicate to them? Are you kind of like, are your thoughts kind of like a word salad as you're kind of talking out and you're like, oh wait, hang on a second, I spoke too fast. They're gonna wanna see a pretty good flow and consistency to how you're answering these questions, but it's also okay to mess up a little bit if you do. And so just listen for what they're asking and then communicate exactly what they asked for. They're gonna look for problem-solving strategies. So this is where it's gonna come in contact, like when they're asking some scenario-based questions, for example, they're gonna wanna see how you solved that organizational problem, how you solved a potential emergency in your workplace. Work ethic and motivation. They're gonna wanna see potentially how long you stayed at a company, whether it was 6 months or a couple years. They're gonna see some motivation to kind of stay with it. Work ethic, they're gonna probably ask about, tell us about a time where you had a really hard day at work or you didn't want to continue, what made you stay? That might not be an option, but they're gonna kind of ask questions to kind of gauge that motivation from within. And then teamwork, a lot of the times when I'm in my mock interviews, I'll ask, tell me about a time you worked in a team, what was your role, what were the results of that team project? Okay. And then we see here types of interviews, virtual being huge right now, but in person, there's one-on-one interviews, so, or two-on-one. Usually there's 1 or 2 people interviewing you and then it's just you in the room. That can be intimidating for some, but more comfortable for others, because then you're not going to have to answer in front of a ton of people like a panel interview. And so panels could be 3 to 6 people, for example, of all these different titles in the company kind of looking at you. So it's okay to be nervous, but just be able to compose yourself. They called you in for an interview, so obviously you're qualifying for something, and be confident within yourself there. We're seeing phone and Skype and things like that. And so screening calls, most of the time they're just kind of like through voice. So they might ask you a few questions before they choose to bring you in for a face-to-face interview or not. And so screening, simple as it is, they're going to screen you before they decide to potentially go forward with you. Group interviews. So it might be a few different interviewees interviewing or being interviewed by one person. So they might ask the same question to each person. And that's just an example. I've only had to do that once, and that was for like a job at Hollister in high school. They kind of did like a big group interview. It's not common, but it could happen. And then we see open forum or presentation interviews. And so they might ask you to give a presentation, for example. When I was applying to one of my school counseling internships last year, they're like, okay, we can bring you in for an interview, and then we're gonna have you present on a topic of whatever it looked like to a group of high school seniors. And as intimidating as that can be, I'd be like, all right, it's career development, I'm good, I know how to do this. But they might ask you to prepare a presentation or teach a lesson, especially if it's teaching or something like that. And then of course, virtual, just like we're doing kind of right now, and just how I've been doing my mock interviews. It's okay to have like a preference for all of these, but there might be situations or positions where you might have to do at least one of these in your lifetime. Okay, just some basic things about the interview. Arrive on time, 15 minutes early is good. Like I said, go to the bathroom, make sure you look good and there's nothing in your teeth, anything like that. And then hop into their office 10 to 15 minutes before, be like, hey, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm here for an interview for this position or with this person. And then sometimes they'll get you water, sometimes they'll just ask you to sit. Do not go on your phone while you're waiting for them to come in for the interview. Like your phone should already be put away in your car, in your bag. Just sit there quietly, kind of observe as much as you can, but do not go on your phone during that time. I used to work in HR, so that's kind of where I'm saying it was like the most annoying thing, where I was about to interview someone and they were on their phone. And I'm like, okay, they might be really good for this job, but it's like they can't be without their phone. And that was just one of the pet peeves of mine. Remember the interviewer's name and use it during or after the interview. Be like, hi, John, my name is Shelby. It's nice to meet you. Even at the beginning. Like I said, use it during. I don't know if I'm the type of person that would use it during the interview, but after the interview, John, thank you so much for interviewing me today. I look forward to hearing from you, or thank you, John, have a good day, things like that. Kind of use their name in the beginning and in the end for sure. Project appropriate appearance. We talked about that already. How you look, how you dress, some confidence, some etiquette there. Maintain appropriate eye contact. And like I said, for some students, I'm like, all right, you're gonna have to put a Post-it note right here above the camera to make sure that you're looking like right at it, because they would be looking at the screen or down at their hands. No, they're gonna wanna maintain that eye contact with you. It's important not to like be super jarring and just stare at them the whole time, because that can get really weird as well. I'd say look at their ear or kind of look at the wall behind them. And if you see them catching your eye, then you can maintain eye contact once again. Let's see, pay attention to nonverbal communication, whether it's within yourself or with someone else. Just make sure you're not swiveling, your foot's not shaking, your hands are kind of on your lap or on the table, not moving. And then listen. So some questions might have multiple parts that you would have to answer. Just make sure you hear the whole question. And again, it's not afraid. Don't be afraid to kind of ask them to repeat it. Let's see, during any contact you have with the organization, the interview, be respectful and be your best with everyone. So from the moment you enter the company door, the moment you talk to the person at the front desk, some workers might be walking in and out to go to the bathroom or to pick something up from the front desk. If they see someone that their company is interviewing on the phone, they'll be like, oh, that person's on their phone. Or they might tell the interviewer, hey, he's on his phone, like whatever. You just want to appear as polite as possible just to everyone. And it could be a smile, it could be a hello, or you could just kind of sit there and observe what they're doing. Okay. So toughest question, can you tell me about yourself? And so this is the first question we ask for our mock interviews. Some people are like, yep, I'm a senior psychology major at MSU Denver, minoring in biology. And then they just leave it at that. You want to be able to share more, but you also don't want to tell your whole life story. And so sometimes we call this like elevator speeches, or again, just a tell me about yourself question. So I like to kind of keep it between like 30 to 45 seconds. Just say I'm a graduating. For me personally, I'd be like, my name is Shelby Herman. I'm in my final year of my Master's of Counseling at Denver Seminary. I'm looking to kind of go into play therapy, high school counseling with seniors, or work in student affairs. And then I can talk about growing up in Michigan. I got my bachelor's degree in human resources from Oakland University outside of Detroit. I've done a lot of work in HR and also adolescent development. And then sometimes I do a fun fact, especially with these virtual meetings. My fun fact for most students is I'm actually 6'1", so I'm really tall. And that just might be an interesting thing that they might want to hear in their interview. So, and then they might want to hear some hobbies you do, or they might just want to hear exactly about like your major. You never know kind of what they're asking for, but those are some general things. So 2 to 3 qualities that best describe you, whether you're talking about kind of your passion for education, for example, willingness to work in a variety of different areas, various qualities like that. The easiest way to do this is ask your friend or your mom or whoever, what are some of my greatest qualities, whether that's communicating, teamwork, energizing people, things like that. A major accomplishment you may or may not have. So what that looks like is I recently graduated from MSU Denver. It was hard to finish my senior year during COVID, but I did it, like something like that, and just be proud of yourself. It's totally cool to brag during this question. A value or principle that is most important in your life and work. You can say, I value just like honesty and integrity, and that's what I'm looking for in a company. And also to be able to develop that within myself as well. And you can kind of speak upon whatever value you choose, but then do tie that back into kind of the work that you're going to do or what you're kind of looking for in a company. And then either some expertise or resource you provide, whether for me it's like HR, career development, adolescent development. For anybody else, it could be engineering, video production, anything like that. It is totally up to you what you choose to do, but that's something that we kind of help students develop in these mock interviews. Should they ask, like, what should I say for that question? We can kind of help you kind of tailor it down on what to say. So this is just a little blurb, a little bit similar to what I said. Of course, I could have gone into a little bit more talking about this internship that I'm in with MSU Denver, an internship that I did in my undergrad, things like that. So my name is Chris Smith. I completed my Bachelor of Social Work from MSU Denver this past December, where I was a student representative in the Colorado Society for Clinical Social Work. Awesome. You're tying a professional organization within your major. My internship in crisis intervention for chemically dependent adolescents, as well as field experience co-facilitating a group of juveniles in a correction facility, piqued my interest in learning more about the work of your organization. I'd like to find time to hear about your program's impact in the community. And so that kind of leads the interviewer into be able to talk about what they do, if they have any ties to what Chris just talked about. And so this is something that you can't really like wing as soon as they ask you. You're going to want to be able to practice this and tailor something that's similar to this, but also not talk about your entire life story. Okay. So they're going to want to get to know you as quickly as they can, but of course, this is their time to interview you. This is your time to talk about yourself and to be able to show your passion that you have for this position and for this company. Like I mentioned, they're going to ask you some strengths and weaknesses. You might be able to probably list 2 per strength, 2 per weakness. Something I kind of ask in these mock interviews is, tell me about a strength you have both personally and professionally, because how you are in your personal life could be a little bit different in your professional life, depending if you're more comfortable professionally than you are personally, things like that. Some students I've interviewed have listed off like 5 or 6 strengths and then like no weaknesses. You're going to want to share an equal balance, because if you show no weaknesses, that might be a little red flag popping up with them. So I'd say it's pretty safe to have 2 strengths and weaknesses to be able to talk about each, and then potentially kind of tie that in to something that you're currently battling with now. A weakness could be, I really struggle, or I really struggled in quarantine. That could be a weakness in itself. I like to be around people. That could be a strength. All right, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like I mentioned, kind of tying into those short-term and long-term goals. You can talk about being with this company or being potentially at a different location for this company. You don't really want to talk about, oh, I only plan on being at this company for 2 years and then kind of transfer to this other company because they're better. But you also don't want to lie. So just be like, I would love to see myself working in mechanical engineering or electrical engineering in the powertrain division, or electrical systems, various things like that. So again, don't lie and say, oh, I'm going to stay here for sure. Just kind of put a general strength to it. Or if you say, oh, I see myself living back in Michigan or Florida and potentially getting married, things like that. But also don't share too much about your life either. What attracted you to this job, this field, this organization? Pretty easy. Just be able to talk about that because they're going to ask you about the company. And then what motivates you to do your best? So this can be anything from your work style to a leadership style that you'd say you get along very well with. It could be anything along that. And then what are your salary expectations for this position? So this can be a question that they might ask, they might not. It's something that you might see already in the job description, or it might be something where you have to negotiate. So most of the time, especially with entry-level jobs, we see like, oh, starting at like $15 an hour, $17 an hour. It just depends. And then should you kind of move up and negotiate salary, if you get promoted, they might ask you to kind of put a desired salary down. And so that can totally depend upon education you have, experience you have, what the company might be willing to offer you, what research you've done specifically in ONET or the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or like I said, Reference USA. And then the C2 Hub also has a Start Smart Salary Negotiation Workshop. We've already done our one for this semester, but I believe we're doing another one for next semester. So totally something to attend if needed. And then we ask a lot of the identifying females to attend, because we always hear of like the rumor or the truth that like we're not paid as much as identifying men. So it's like you want to make sure to like prove yourself. No, this is what I'm looking for. This person got paid this. I want to be able to do this. And of course, it's open to anyone as well. Okay, and then how do you measure success? So that could be anything in terms of succeeding on a project to completing something before the deadline. They might ask you about that. And then why should I hire you? Again, talk about yourself, but talk about your willingness to work for this organization, work on this project, to say like, oh, I've always wanted to work here. It's been a dream. That's awesome, but why? They want to see that as well. Okay, so now kind of getting into those scenario-based questions that we might see. A lot of them started with, tell me about a time when you blank. So it could be, had a conflict with a coworker or supervisor. Did you accidentally start it? Did you purposefully start it? You might not want to share that, but what happened? How did you resolve it? They're going to ask you about kind of the results ends to these questions as well. Tell me about a time when you had a dissatisfied client. So for me, even kind of working in my counseling practicum, there was a client that I guess I didn't address her need right away. And so that was something that I kind of apologized for the next time. I was like, hey, I'm so sorry that we should have talked about this a little bit more, and I'm sorry we weren't able to address that. Let's talk about this today. And so owning a lot of it, especially if there's some conflict or issue that might have happened, do own it, even if it probably wasn't you directly, and then talk about how you resolved it. Tell me about a time when you were working on a team. It could be in a past job, it could be in a sports team, it could be in a project in class. They just want to hear about a teamwork scenario. Tell me about a time when you were asked to handle an emergency. Sometimes students don't know what to say for this, or sometimes they've never been in that situation. So you can be honest and say, honestly, I've never really had to handle an emergency, but this is what I would do. And it's okay to own that, absolutely. Tell me about a time when you presented an idea to solve a problem. Easy enough, expand upon that. Tell me about a time when you had to make a tough decision. So if some of you have had a managerial role, did you have to let an employee go? Was it because they were late? Was it because they weren't performing? Were they not being professional on the job? That could just be an example of a tough decision. Okay. And then at the end of the interview, they're going to ask you, do you have any questions for us? Don't say, no, I think I'm good. Don't. They're going to want to be able, even if you don't have questions, just make up something. Like I mentioned, ask them about their position, ask them about how they got to where they were, their company culture, what they love about their job, various things like that. Sometimes students might be like, okay, what are the salary and benefits for this position? That might not be the best time. You want to be able to kind of confirm the job first and accept the job before you ask about that. It just depends on the vibe that you might be getting in the interview as well. So have a list of questions ready for them, including a goal-related question, whether that looks like, oh, what are the company's goals for the next 5 years? Where would you guys like to see yourselves? Can you tell me about goals this team and your organization is currently working toward? How will this position impact these goals? So what is your role in achieving that goal? What would you like to see a person in this position accomplish in the first 3 months? This is a fantastic question because those are those expectations that you're going to turn back on you. And they're probably going to expect that if you do accept the position, they're going to be like, yep, well, this person asked about this and now we're going to hold them to it. Yeah, so you can ask this question or you might not want to, but you're going to probably be held accountable, especially if you ask that question.
Hey, Shelby, I have a quick question. Is there a limited number of questions that you should ask? Like, is 3 too much? Should you only stick with 1?
I don't know, I'd say like coming from an HR perspective, 3 to 5, I think is a safe bet, but at least 3. I'd say 3 is the golden number. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And my follow-up question to that is, if you know you have something that might be a possible conflict for them, is that a place to ask about that? Like, say you do something on the side that might be a time of conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can ask them work hours or things like that. It is illegal in an interview for them to ask if you are a mother, because then if you say yes, they'll be like, oh, this person has kids. They might not be able to, I guess, commit to the job as much as we're asking. So if they ask you that, that is illegal. And then that's something that you can kind of, I guess, like deal with later in a way. You can just talk about, and just kind of keep it brief. Be like, are the hours pretty strict with being 9 to 5? I would have to jet out of here right at 5 if possible. Or sometimes I'd say like companies like Google, they're very lax with their hours. They expect them to work more. So you want to be able to maintain that work-life balance, and of course, not giving too much information out for the fear that they might not hire you because of that. So just be honest, be like, could I potentially just do 4 10-hour days and then have my Fridays off? And that may or may not be possible. That's just something that you might have to negotiate with them once you accept the position as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, some final tips for all of you. Again, speak clearly, stay focused, don't get too, I guess, like running with an answer. You're gonna wanna be able to tie that back pretty quickly. That's one thing that we do correct some students on if they do a mock interview with us. Illustrate answers with examples and stories. They wanna be able to see you kind of tell a story in a way. Whether you can make it funny, you can make it serious, but they're gonna wanna be able to kind of see that within you. Again, be positive, avoid distracting behavior. So I guess like my dad's house phone going off, that was like out of my control. So I heard it, I owned it, and you move on. But again, if there's anything in the background, for example, like my family's den could be a little bit distracting. I should have like fogged my background out. You want to be mindful of that. And then of course to breathe as well. So it's okay if they ask you a question and you're like, oh no, what do I do? Take a deep breath in that moment and then kind of figure out your question figure out your answer as you're kind of breathing out. Okay.
Oh, before you move on, we had a student ask a question. How do you sign up for mock interviews?
Yeah. So I'll get into that in just a second. I'll give you the contact information for that, and then you can contact the front desk or just email me directly. We have another grad intern, Nina, and then my supervisor, April. Okay. All right. So just a few things after the interview. You're going to want to send a thank you letter immediately. In the olden days, some people kind of like wrote this out. You can totally just send an email. Make sure your email, the spelling and grammar is good. Sometimes your email might catch something, but you want to make sure it's good. Like we see some mistakes all the time. And so I'll message the student back, be like, hey, thanks for the thank you email, but notice that you spelled this word wrong or whatever. They're like, oh my goodness, thanks. So send a thank you letter immediately, not typing it in your phone like as you walk out of the office. So as soon as you get home, do email that, or even as soon as you get off this call or get off this virtual interview. Don't send something immediately, but maybe within like a half an hour. Okay, follow-up. So most of the time they will tell you when they might be following up with you, and then this is totally a question that you can ask the interviewers when you are asking those questions. So you can say, should I get this position? When will I hear back from you? Or you can say, when will I hear back from you about the future for this position, or what is the remainder of this hiring job look like? They might say, oh, we're going to be interviewing a few more people. We'll get back to you within a week. But if they don't, it's totally appropriate to make a call or make an email just to make sure. They might have looked over you, or they might have forgotten, or something might have come up with the company where they just kind of forgot to let you know whether or not you got the position. So totally okay. I'd say if you're expecting something back on a Friday and it's Tuesday, totally reach out, maybe two business days after they promised they would let you know. Compensation negotiation. So this would happen once you accept the job, or this could be a negotiation before you accept the job. Of course, this is something that could be like kind of a hit or miss. You would probably want to talk with like my supervisor, April, for example. She's very good at kind of like skills for salary negotiation. I'm still learning myself, or do a lot of research. And just be like, hey, from the research that I've done, someone in this position with this much education experience generally makes this range. Or you can ask them, what were you thinking about offering me first before you kind of present? You never know, just kind of get a feel for that. All right, feedback from the interviewers. I don't know why WERS is like bigger font, excuse that. Feedback from them. So this is totally something that you can do once you got the job. Be like, hey, I was really nervous for this interview. What did you guys like about me? What answer was good? What are some things I could improve on? And should they say, oh, we've decided not to offer this position, or we decided to move on with someone else, you can ask them, hey, is there anything that I could have done better in the interview? Is there a question that I could have answered with a better scenario? It never hurts to follow up. You be prepared that it could hurt a little bit depending on kind of what they might have been looking for, but also sometimes that feedback will help you improve in the future. So do take it with a grain of salt. Don't be like extremely like defensive about it, but do know that's kind of what they saw. They're pretty good at interviewing people by the time that they are an interviewer for the company. And so do take their advice into consideration, especially if you didn't get the position. Okay. We have a couple more events coming up for C2 Hub in the future. So next Wednesday, we have a practice interview workshop. I believe that this is through Zoom. And so you would just hop on kind of like our drop-in resume workshops that we've been having through Zoom. Myself, the other grad intern, Nina, my supervisor, April, and then a couple of our peer mentors who work in the C2 Hub office will be like, yep, I'll work with you in this breakout room. And then they'll kind of have that list of questions to work with you with. So no need to schedule an appointment with this. We do encourage you to sign up though through the CareerLink website, or you can also drop in case you forgot. And then our Start Smart Salary Negotiation Workshop. I forgot there is another one this semester, so that'll be 2 Tuesdays from yesterday, 2 to 4 p.m. And that's where it's really key to attend. Even if you're a freshman, sophomore, you never kind of know what skills you can start working on to build up your salary negotiation skills. Okay. Let's see, we have a resource called VMOC that is free for MSU Denver students to use. You just want to make sure you type in vmoc.com/MSU Denver because we've already paid for this for you to use for free. So BMOC, simply put, is kind of like a robot that looks over your resume and will give you instant feedback. And so sometimes it might be like, oh, this is really wrong, this is really off. They might catch spelling errors, they might not. And so I'd say it's kind of like a foundation base, especially if you just want to get some feedback really quickly. I believe you only have a certain amount of resume reviews to do through this system. Oh, Sheila's saying 10. So 10 resume reviews to do. So don't like fix one little error and then like run it through again. You want to be able to kind of use it for the big positions, or especially if you changed a lot around in your resume. And then of course, we're here for you to kind of do an in-person resume, in-person meaning virtual right now. So use both of us. You can use up all the C2 Hub resources. Like we're here for you no matter what. So, and then a good thing for any of you, if you're seniors or graduating, you're able to use some C2 Hub resources for up to 1 year after graduation. So that's huge, especially, looks like someone's trying to join. Oh, I'm sorry, that's with my future meeting that I have after this one. So especially with, I totally forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, so up to 1 year of graduation. So if you're 6 months out of graduation, you're like, oh my gosh, I need help. Like you can totally meet with us for free still. Okay, so MSU Denver Career Link is our online career kind of, I'd say, hub for everything that you might need. So you can create and store resumes in our resume creator. If you need a job, you can browse lots of opportunities, research employers, do on-campus interviews, meet face-to-face with recruiters, and then learn what it takes to get the job. So there's so much that you can find there. And it's highly encouraged for students that are looking for internships or positions to look there first, absolutely. Yeah, so a lot to find on there, just kind of explore, and you never know what you might find. Okay, and then if any of you need more help with your job search, we are here for you to do job and internship searching, career counseling, which could be like weekly or bi-weekly hourly sessions, just to help you with anything you might need help with, resume and cover letter reviews, grad school statement of purpose or grad school essay reviews, mock interviews, anything that you might need relating to career, we're able to help you out as best as possible. So go ahead and screenshot this screen here. Like it says on the slide, email resume reviews. So you could just send one of us your email and be like, hey, I don't have time to meet, but could you just send this back with some edits? I've done that for a few students, it's no problem. And then there's our phone and email. Like I said, I'll put my email in the chat. You could just email me directly if you'd like to schedule. It doesn't matter. So I think that's it. Let's see. Is that all? I think, I don't know. Yeah, so this is the time for questions. If you have any remaining questions, we have my supervisor, April, on the screen there. If you'd like to ask her a question, or if not, just go ahead. You can send me an email. I'll send it right now. And then we're just here for a couple more minutes to be able to help you out.
It looks like there's a question in the chat about signing up for mock interviews, and I think you covered it really well, Shelby, but just to restate, you can always contact C2Hub at msudenver.edu. You can call the number there, or you can contact any of us directly to set that up.
All right, take that survey that Sheila just sent. And then again, if any of you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd be happy to help. So if you're afraid to speak up, no problem, just send me an email.
Great, thank you so much, Shelby. We appreciate you being here.
Of course, thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.